Welcome to the first of what will hopefully be many Plists in the future. Platinum lists, Plists. This one, 10 things I hate about Georgia wrestling. Might as well start off strong. Quick disclaimer: am I gonna speak in like wide generalities? Of course, right? We don't want this thing to last forever, and I'm not gonna qualify everything. If you think these things apply to you, they probably do. And if you find yourself conflicted, where you're finding yourself arguing in your head about, well, I don't think this really applies to me because maybe this thing, you're probably working too hard. It is what it is. I'm not going to apologize for it. Let's just get into the list. You want to hear it. I want to do it. Number 10. Thing that I hate about Georgia wrestling: rumbles and battle royals. Fuck me, there's so many. Every group does them. Have I ever done them? Of course I have, but Jesus, I mean, it's just typically it's just a lame excuse to have a bunch of people in a match because you don't know how to book. It's a substitute for creating personal conflicts that really lead to the greatest matches and the greatest draws and things like that. And basically, it's copying the WWE, right? Royal Rumble, we all love it. For many people, it's their favorite pay-per-view an event that the WWE does, leading to WrestleMania or just period. And so guys want to copy. Just lame as fuck. 9. Your posters and flyers, right? They're almost all badly made. Yes, even the epic filter ones that use the epic filter, and they're always so fucking crowded, and there's no sense of color scheme. They're either one of two things: they're way too colorful, or they're just way too like sepia and badass and trying to look like 300. They're awful. And if you're wondering, a lot of these things on the top 10 list, there's exceptions to the rule, but not the poster one. I can't think of anybody's posters that I fucking love, right? Yes, yours too. Your posters suck. That's number 9. Number 8, forcing organic moments. Of course, we're all in the business of manipulating to an extent and creating emotion and all that kind of stuff, but the amount of forcing that goes on in Georgia Indies now is staggering, right? Instead of providing a foundation, just a foundation where greatness can happen as a reward for the hard work and diligence put in, right? You basically railroad the fans into being outraged, right? Or you railroad them into being happy or supporting your group. Groups that have started the chant for the wrestling group in the hopes that the fans would join in, right? We all think it's lame when they pipe in Goldberg chants, yet wrestling groups continue to do it, right? You're forcing fans into having this moment. You're forcing fans into seeming outraged by starting the riot or throwing things into the ring to encourage them to do it as well. So then you can point to it and go like, look, oh my God, our fans are so into it and our fans love us, or, oh, the fans are so outraged by this moment, right? The problem with forcing the organic moment is, do they happen as a result? Yes, often they do, but there's something lost in there. It's not truly a historic moment, right? You created it. And those things tend to not last. Anyway, 8, for forcing organic moments, thing I hate about Georgia wrestling in the modern game. Fans! You're probably shocked that this isn't higher on the list, but I got some juicy ones up top. Of course, going through this list, the hardest part was arranging them in order. And of course, picking that number 1 was really difficult. You're going to want to stick around for number 1. Fans. Wrestling fans have always been dumb fucks, right? That's why they were marks, right? You mark people with a piece of chalk at the carnival so you know who are the pigeons you can take the money from. That's where the term probably originated, right? The etymology of that word. Etymology, what the fuck's that? But I don't know if there has been a time where fans have been so willfully ignorant. That's a theme that you're going to hear in a couple of these things. Willfully ignorant, right? And they whine and they complain and they're so entitled. Whether it's the Southern Fried fans who are whining about the seating. Southern Fried's going to have their biggest show of the year, Shindig. A crowd they lied about, by the way. I don't care how many times fucking David Manders bitches and moans in private. You know, you lie about the crowd, you get called on it, whatever. But their fans whining about the fact that they were packing in more chairs, right, to try to make some money at their biggest event of the year. It just showed how not only willfully ignorant the fans are, but how entitled they are. Sorry, you're fucking a fat ass. Right? Like, that's their fucking... and there's this notion, and it's sort of... And of course, the boys are to blame for this, and promoters are to blame for this too, but really, the fans, there's this thing where they have to be acknowledged by the wrestlers and the promoters constantly. If it wasn't for the fans, and it wasn't for the fans. And that stems from the entitlement that has come with being a wrestling fan. It's fucking sickening. Right? Sickening. It's this circle jerk thing. It's not sincere, right? Oh, we would be nothing without the fans. Oh, we appreciate the wrestlers that put their bodies on the line. Oh, special thanks to the promoter for putting on this event. Well, I couldn't do it without the fans. Oh, yeah, but the boys, they sacrifice everything. And the promoters, oh, they're so great. And oh, they provide us the upper... Fuck you. All of you, right? And the main thing I hate about the wrestling fan is they've permeated everything in wrestling without a line being drawn. The marks are in the locker room. The marks are running promotions. The marks are booking promotions. There's no line drawn. Now, some may say that that's just me being old-fashioned or wanting to hold on to my power or some kind of shit like that. But no, the problem is, if nobody is a specialist or nobody is an elite or nobody has privileged knowledge, because it's all become lowest common denominator. And in the wrestling totem pole, fans are the lowest common denominator, and their thinking should not permeate everything else. But there's this notion that you gotta make the fans happy, as that's supposed to be your mantra. That's supposed to be your mission statement now, is whatever makes the fans happy. Fan service in pro wrestling has gotten us to where we are right now. Hate to break it to you. Number 6, the titles without the responsibility. And you may think I'm just talking about being the champion, and that's part of it. You want to be a champion of the promotion, you're supposed to represent that promotion. If you're the fucking champion of a promotion, you're not supposed to be a jobber somewhere else. Right? If you're a pro wrestler, but you won't physically put in the work, what the fuck are you? Right? That's one thing I agree about with Chase Stevens. If you're a pro wrestler, you're supposed to be, on some level, an athletic badass, or at least a badass in some way, shape, or form. But you can't defend yourself. You have no knowledge of physicality. What the fuck? Right? These wrestlers, I constantly see, I'm doing this comeback, but they don't even touch a wrestling ring on the way to their comeback. They just go in and expect to be carried throughout the ring, or some mystical knowledge is going to stay in their head, and physicality doesn't matter. You can't have a comeback in any sport. If you have a comeback, if you're in baseball, you've engaged in batting practice or pitching or thrown the ball 1 trillion times to get ready for your comeback. If you're in football, you've worked out. Not just worked out in the gym, you've put on pads and done something. You've thrown a football, you've caught a football. Only in pro wrestling, and again, it's one of these reasons it's a fucking joke. And people who want to call it a sport, if it's a sport, then how come it's the only thing where when a guy makes a comeback after laying off for God knows how long, they do it by just walking back into the ring? Do boxers, does anybody in any combat sport do that? Of course not, right? Titles without responsibility. Bookers who don't tell stories or evolve as storytellers or establish contacts. Bookers are supposed to bring people in. They're supposed to be out there scouting talent, not just looking at video on Facebook or YouTube, but actually going and meeting people and getting a feel for them, right? If you're hiring people for jobs, right, are you not going to interview them face to face? Of course you are. Think about that. Bookers' jobs, storytellers, and people who have the contacts and bring them in. But everyone wants to call themselves a booker, right? Being a matchmaker is not the same as being a booker. That's probably a story for another time. And promoters that shuttle off the responsibility of promoting to others. This huge movement of promoters just whining, people won't share my flyer. Of course, but abdicating the primary responsibility of promoting is not accepting the title. And also the buck not stopping with you. If something fucks up in your show, it's your job. I'll give Ring of Honor credit for this. When that Bully Ray bullshit happened where they dragged that fan backstage, their immediate position, and it's because they're corporate tied. That's the truth. But their immediate position was, that was messed up, that shouldn't happen, we're looking into it. Yeah? When a promoter, something happens on their watch, right? They're supposed to go, all right, that didn't work out as well as I wanted it to, we're moving on. That's fine, but we'll get into that more later because you know promoters are on this list. That was number 6, titles without responsibility. 5, your bullshit tribes. Your bullshit tribes, right? Your nation of fans. Nation. You don't have a nation of fans. You have a bunch of people who right now are filling up a hole in their lives with your bullshit product for a little while. Nothing is permanent. Right. And I get that you have to pretend that they are, but they're not. This thing where the boys click up and call themselves a group, it is what it is, I get it, but you think of it as a strength. Oh, I've got this group of guys and it's great, you can book us together and all this kind of stuff. We'll fill up a car for you and we're this group and we're that group and we're that group. I see it as a group of guys who are too weak to stand alone. So all they do is exclusively wrestle with and against each other. Yeah. Tribes of we're this wrestling group's fans, we're that wrestling group's fans, and we're these fanatics. And there's becoming this disturbing trend, and I think it's because things have gotten very well as far as attendance and things go. Now people are kind of hardening the edges of their tribes, right? They're not integrating new fans. They seem to shun new opinions or thoughts about things, right? And groups of the boys, it's their peers. They're not integrating different levels in, meaning they don't have a veteran in the group that can teach others. It's like 4 guys that have been doing it about the same time, wrestle for the same promotions, who basically have the same experiences and ride in a car jerking each other off about how they know so much more than everybody that they wrestle for. But there's no delineation within these tribes. They're tribes without chiefs, right? Or they're tribes where everybody's a chief. That's the problem. And am I in a tribe? Of course, right? And inevitably you get put in these sort of circles and sort of Venn diagrams. The circles cross over, whatever. Sorry, I'm speaking too complicated for people. I'll keep it simple. But what tribe am I ultimately beholden to? And I think is a very small tribe. The tribe of the spine, I will call it. There's a lot of people who support me privately. And I appreciate that support. But if it's something important and you agree with me, should you feel obligated to support me publicly in some way, even if it's something as simple as sharing my video? Of course you should. But I'm in the tribe of the spine, and there's a lot of people who are in the tribe of the spineless who talk out of both sides of their neck. Yeah? Steve, what you're saying is right on the money. Or they give me information, which is also greatly appreciated. But on the other hand, still glad hand the people that they're trying to hurt or change. Interesting. Tribes. Number 5. Number 4. Your wrestling group names. So I've said I was going to bring this up a long time ago. I'm going to bring it up now. If your wrestling group is named after a wrestling move, you're a dumb. That's a dumb fuck name. It's a dumb fuck name. Do I have to really go into why that is? Do other entertainment forms or do that? Not great ones. um, Here I'm going to rock the boat. We have to acknowledge these things, right? Or the list is meaningless. Wrestling group names. Turnbuckle was a stupid fucking name. Naming your promotion after a part of a wrestling ring is dumb as fuck. Dusty's brilliant. Turnbuckle was not, yeah? Or the shit about stuff sounding too regional. And I know that's definitely going to ruffle feathers, right? Because that's almost every promotion in the state of Georgia. Yeah. Say what you will about Platinum Championship Wrestling. That dog hunted. That name can go anywhere. And that name sticks in your brain. The letters are chantable. And it sounds like if Platinum Championship Wrestling tomorrow competed with the big boys, right? Like somebody bought it or whatever happened, and Platinum Championship Wrestling sounds like a big fucking deal. Does your promotion sound like anything other than culling a group of people to create a tribe in order to make some money, but ultimately limiting yourself and limiting your wrestlers in thinking and scope and scale? Sorry, I hate the regional sounding group name. I definitely hate groups that are named after wrestling moves or something like Stranglehold. Oh my god. That all this stuff that just marginalizes your group and just immediately pigeonholes it makes me not want to even fucking participate in your group or witness it. Yeah. Getting down there, 3 promoters. Ooh, you're probably shocked that this isn't higher as well. But trust me, the top 2 are fucking even bigger. What are my problems with promoters? They're liars. Oh my god. And of course, your immediate response, this is how bad it is. When I say promoters are liars, your immediate response, everybody watching and listening to this is, well, they've always been liars. And what does that tell you, by the way? But here's the thing. Now they just double down on the lie. Double down on the lie. That's the era that we're in, right? Even the most objective things. How many people are sitting there watching your wrestling show or bought a ticket to watch it? Look at this empirical evidence that that is not true. No, but you're just saying that because your subjective reasoning to counter my objective statement, factual statement, shows where we are as far as promoters go, right? They're liars. They double down on the lie. Instead of adjusting their behavior, even privately, not acknowledging it publicly, but adjusting their behavior and changing for the better, just doesn't happen. And I'll say this, back in the day, everybody had to adjust. Everybody had to make changes, myself included, but nowadays the guys just seem willful. I mean, nowadays, the 2 most prized virtues, but Father, none of my virtues were on your list, right? The prime thing, promoters back in the day, it was sort of like, he was really carny and he was a real hustler and da-da. You know what the 2 major traits of almost every promoter in Georgia is now? Ignorance and belligerence about that ignorance. Yeah. And you've taken something that was outlaw, right? That's what made wrestling great, right? It was outlaw. It was a little bit on the fringe. And you've managed to make it uncool overall. Who are the guys running the major promotions and events in the Southeast? You know what? They're law enforcement and very religious people. Does it get more uncool than that? What the fuck, Georgia? Promoters. 2, Southern wrestling. I'm not specifically the idea of Southern wrestling, most of which I love, but I'm talking about these things that people outside of Georgia associate with Southern wrestling because they happen in Georgia so fucking frequently, yeah? The Confederate flag as a babyface, is it a problem in and of itself? I wrestled with this question because part of me wants to go like, no, there's no problem with it, right? It's how you really are, and if that's your form of expression, and there's a great deal of the fans that. But in this time, in this day and age, which again people would use as an argument, well, all the more reason, right? I'm not going to just bend and flow with the times and social justice warriors. No, 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 no. I'm going to just say it. I'm taking this position to flaunt a Confederate flag or the rebel flag or whatever the fuck you want to call it in this day and age as a baby face in the face of a company and all the rest of this. And this is not just Southern Fried. This is a bunch of promotions that I see, right? It is about it is about exclusion and willful ignorance to not only a section of the fans that you would potentially get or appeal to or interest, but to the people in the locker room with you. I'm tired of these fucking tropes, fighting good old boys and rednecks. It's fucking embarrassing. If you're a wrestler that's in overalls and going, that shit should hurt your heart if you're a wrestler in the state. But it doesn't. Doesn't mean they're bad people. Doesn't mean that they can't work. I didn't say any of that. I'm just saying it's a fucking tired trope that I am tired of seeing. And I think you can do better. I don't have a problem with fat guys. I used to be one myself. But it's the slovenly, unhealthy guys, the older fat guys that don't look like they see the outdoors, or who just don't look like they belong in something that's a physical fighting event, or an athletic event, or both, right? And finally, the thing about Southern wrestling has gotten a reputation for that I absolutely hate in Georgia wrestling is that ignorance and arrogance about the ignorance passes strengths now. How many wrestlers in the state of Georgia do I read who are proud of the fact that they don't read books? Or when there's valid criticism, brush it off because it's against their viewpoint. As long as people keep embracing ignorance and arrogance about that ignorance as a strength, folks, the perception's never going to get better. You can keep railing against other parts of the country. Man, they keep thinking we're fucking ignorant. We keep thinking blah, blah, blah. You got to meet them most of the way if you want to break that stereotype. Sorry. If I can still hear about a wrestling show happening in the state of Georgia where somebody cuts a promo that says, this guy's a faggot and it's bad because God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. The fact that that's happened and continues to happen, and then people would chalk it up to, well, it's wrestling, and then that's our crowd. And thanks for proving my point. Number one, the boys. The boys. You're soft. Yeah. All the things, all the barriers and obstacles that used to be in place that prevented people from getting into the business very easily or thriving in it are now to be complained about and bemoaned. Now, are there certain things that needed to change, and I'm glad they've changed? Am I glad that there isn't any more like that certain kinds of hazing have been taken out? That's great. But pro wrestling groups don't owe you anything, right? And removing every obstacle has just made it that the person who used to sit in the seat paying money instantly is now in the locker room. What has that done to wrestling? It's made it a million times worse. And in Georgia, it's as rampant or more rampant than everywhere else, right? There's also a lack of guys accepting their role. That goes from the bottom of the card to the top. it's guys that should feel very fortunate that they're even involved in wrestling because they just won't put in the work or their bodies won't hold up and all this stuff, who seem to demand that they have more and that they're owed a place in on a wrestling card. This is men and women, by the way. Instead of accepting their role and striving to improve it or getting more, right? If you're a champion in a promotion and you think that you should be wrestler of the year, but then you go somewhere else and you're just a fucking jobber, that's a number of people who are failing in their roles. But primarily it's you, yeah? I put it on the boys. Right? An example of the sort of modern mentality of the pro wrestler of the boys in the modern day is the way that I see them constantly on social media belittling the idea of a ring rat, right? Back in the day, you were just happy. That was sort of a perk of the job, where it's just like, holy crap, there are people who are sort of interested in me sexually, and that was an appealing thing. And now am I saying that all the behavior towards the wrestlers and the rats was appropriate or equal or whatever? No, it wasn't. Is it between rock stars and groupies and whatever else? No, it wasn't. But it's weird that in this day and age where guys are supposed to be so woke and respectful towards women that they belittle the rats, right, on one hand, and they out the boys that might have sex with a wrestling fan. Oh my God, the horror of it all, right? But yet, how many of the boys do I see that end up dating and marrying rats under the guise of something else? Very telling and interesting. Fucking weird new generation of the boys, for sure, right? Here's one of my main issues with the boys in the modern game, right? You're consumers instead of producers. You're very happy to take in video games and get the WWE network and have your picture taken with other with wrestlers that are bigger than you. On one hand, you want to be acknowledged as a peer in the business. But on the other hand, you act like anything but a peer. It's part of this like sort of fan mentality that has trickled out throughout the locker room and all the way up to the top to the bookers and promoters, right? You're consumers primarily instead of producers primarily. That's my issue. And you've allowed that to happen. It's happened from the boys on up. Yeah. To put it bluntly, I understand that wrestling has changed, and the idea that you can wrestle 5 to 8 times a week to make money and continue to do it is not a reality for most people. I don't mind the fact that there's weekend warriors. I just mind the fact that people call themselves or embrace the notion of being weekend warriors, but they won't do the warrior part. Ooh. The boys always talk about, I put my body on the line, but they don't treat themselves and treat pro wrestling as if they are really putting their bodies on the line. Do they work out hard enough? Do they train hard enough? Do they have enough knowledge? The person that they're wrestling in the ring with, are they protecting their body as well as their own? Right? I put my body on the line. Then why don't you act like it? Why don't you take that as seriously as you want other people to take it? Look, here's why I'm so hard on the boys. And then, of course, that implies women as well. Jesus. You have the ability to control wrestling's future. You almost exclusively have that ability, yet instead you remain willfully ignorant. Yeah? You really don't tap into all of the information available that would really benefit you. The information that you tap into, that you acknowledge publicly, is more about what it says about you that you tap into it than the fact that you're really trying to gather information to help yourself and help wrestling, right? And the reason you don't do this is because you're lazy. I see very few of the boys do I see working hard enough. How many wrestlers are out there that are really talented, but they've got the bodies of shit, and their excuse is, well, I don't need to have a good body. Yeah, you do. That's the business that you chose. That's the era that we're in. How many wrestlers are champions in one fed and jobbers in another? And then they would say, well, I'm just trying to get ring time. How many wrestlers are making these purported comebacks who don't set foot in a wrestling ring until they do it in front of a crowd and expect to be taken seriously and have so little respect for the people that they're working with that they're basically saying, I think I might be in a position where I'm able to protect you and protect myself, but maybe not, so let's hope it goes okay. That's all the boys. That's not promoters, it's not bookers, that's choices that you're making. Yeah. Because you're lazy or you're scared. In short, the reason the boys are number one on the list is because out of everybody in the wrestling business, and in Georgia wrestling specifically that heard it, you're the ones who are the most scared to be what you really want to be and do what it takes to get there.